that's so palpable and so visceral and so just beautiful, the creative collaboration that exists in this industry. And I think that's what's so inspiring and so addictive. And if through this technology and what we're trying to do with Bingeable and what Moises is trying to do with Movie Mart and all of these different platforms, we're trying to lower the threshold to entry so that we can have more people and more communities feeling that feeling. And I think it's so exciting to be a part of that and to have all of these little microorganisms that we can help support, and it just sort of grows and ripples that out there. So I'd love to be a part of, spreading that feeling as far and wide as possible.
So I think I hear a lot of like the keyword being community. I think, at Toonstar we sort of think about like IP building at the level of like community really kind of being able to participate in building and creating IP. I think I've used the example of kind of other franchises being built in the legacy world, and it's always been this sort of like top-down distribution, but not so much engagement. We are used to being given incredible stories to consume, but as consumers, no one's ever really invited consumers to really kind of join in and really kind of participate in the creation of IP, in getting feedback, in having a direct dialogue with the creator. And I think that's really powerful about what Web3 is going to enable, is just a different way to think about creation of IP. And at the end of the day, if you think about like all of the greatest IPs that have ever been created, they were created on top of like really, really avid fan bases. Harry Potter's not Harry Potter without the fans. And I think that's really what, Web3 and what this new sort of like, what the new creation sort of world now is going to flip to, is this like collaborative storytelling, collaborative IP creation, and this is the technology that's going to enable that, and I think that's what we're really excited about.
I love it. So if I was to summarize and then put it in a bag, I'd call it a C-suite, and I would say like community creates collaboration, and collaboration cultivates culture, and culture, I don't have another C word, but it was going somewhere, it didn't develop. But yeah, community is a core value of, why a lot of people find it easy to, I would say, mix and mingle in this space. And the opportunity, like you mentioned, with brands previously, it was always a one-way street. There was never a communication that was correspondence. It was very transactional, but literally just, we give you this, you give us that. Whereas now you have engagement opportunities that never existed. So literally any company coming out now, moving forward, if they're applying and adopting these new technologies and new systems and infrastructure, they can really create a new system. And I like giving people equity into things that I do, so I could just see if everybody in the reel of credits at the end, including potentially craft services and the cleanup crew and the driver and so on and so forth, every extra background, etc., immediately autonomously got compensated based off of the results of that film, then they would all be championing and pioneering and pushing it year-round for the rest of their lives, ideally, because the better it does and the more syndication and opportunities that it has, the more they get compensated, much like music artists and their catalogs. So that's kind of one part of my level of excitement to it. I think this opens Pandora's box on the opportunity to make any product or service or company more equitable and fair for everybody. So, what am I going to say?
So that exact, ethos is what Bingeable is built on. Both having from gross revenue participation for every single person who's touched the project, and that is a part of the recoupment that starts from $1 and continues in perpetuity, and that share doubles once the cost of production and marketing has hit 125%, right? But on top of that, there's a monetization and promotion of the content, so that any single person, whoever you are, whether you're a star promoting to your millions of followers, you're a fan in Vernon, British Columbia, whoever you are, you make 20% of the transaction that you create, So that's a way, like you said, if the person has skin in the game, if they've got equity, if they feel a sense of ownership, they're gonna be so impassioned, so committed to promoting that project and to spreading it as far and wide as possible. And monetizing that word of mouth and aligning everybody's interests is something that benefits the creative community more than anything.
Yeah, and so I think that kind of segues into what I was thinking about asking next, which is, talking about equitable and fair dealings, that requires us to put aside our trust issues and be unapologetically transparent and authentic, which we should be anyways, but that's just my thing, I guess. But how important is transparency in film and TV and entertainment moving forward, knowing what we're going through now and just went through? What do you think is the opportunity of providing more clarity with everything moving forward with these tools? And what does the future of that look like? How important is transparency in TV and film?
Well, I would say it was always very important.
Yeah.
I don't think that it was any less important. I think that there just was never any tools to really enable that transparency. And I think that that's really kind of been the big push into decentralization, is because that's, when you have centralized data, when you have centralized, single points of decision making, reasons for why things are done, and reasons for just, simple as accounting and royalties, etc. That's all kind of held, and you just have to believe. And that's why I spent 12 years at Disney, and I'll tell you, like, the lawyers and the accountants and all of that, auditors involved in just basic dealings with talent and creators and everybody down the line. I think it was always really messy, and I think for both the studio end and the kind of like everybody else on the line. So I think that's the opportunity, and I think what you guys are doing at Bingeable is exactly that, is creating that sort of level of transparency that everyone can look at the books and be like, hey, if this is the deal that we struck, and this is exactly how it gets disseminated.
Totally. I mean, I think to your point, obviously transparency and data holds so much power. And this has been such a crux of the negotiations this time around with the unions, and the WGA was able to get a modicum of a view into what the streaming numbers will be, and hopefully SAG can improve upon that, and then hopefully 3 years from now we can improve upon that, and so on and so forth. But if we can build a model from the ground up utilizing blockchain technology, which at its core, one of the best things that it can do is provide transparent accounting, where literally you can empower everybody, any stakeholder in a project, to see what's been generated revenue-wise, where it's been generated, and then empower them to use that to chase either better licensing deals for that project, using it to improve on their deals on their next project. That's incredibly powerful, and it's a way to also just connect to the brands, the companies, and to the audiences that are going to be the most invested in a project, and then just have that ripple out from there. So I think that's what's most exciting to me about blockchain technology, is just the immutable accounting, when in this industry right now it is so exorbitant and opaque and mysterious, and it is used as a system to either shield true profit or to create a process where money's made and hoarded without being shared or distributed. There's constant lawsuits and litigation, and here we are in this room, we're like, no, but we have the answer. It's here, it's ready. And so I think there's so many applications and beyond our industry where it's going to be very influential, and hopefully when we're coming up on this next negotiation 3 years from now, the things that we've been building in this room and how we take it from there will have a real impact on the negotiations.
I'll say I'm probably the least qualified to answer this, just being on the infrastructure side of things, but what's interesting I can share with everybody about my day-to-day. A lot of my job is to demystify Web3 to the traditional systems and executives, and a lot of conversations start with, you know, them freaking out about control and that we don't want to relinquish control, right? They don't want to do that. But what I think is so important to continue to educate and include in this type of conversation is the fact that everybody wins with this technology. I think that's a huge misunderstanding, is that, I mean, in a dark way, like they could have more control. It's not that, but it's that even if they did, there would be more fair accountability. Like what you were saying is it gives this opportunity for a very messy system to hold people accountable for the deals they're setting up. So it's better in that sense, but I spend a lot of the time demystifying that to executives to say, no, this is an opportunity for you not to depend on the theaters, the traditional systems, the streamers, to allow that direct, intimate relationship to the consumer and add more value to that relationship. So from that way, and then the consumers, they feel seen, they feel participants, like, and they feel rewarded for them advocating or participating in the IP. So I just think that's like the thought that we should continue to bring up in these conversations, because a lot of executives in Hollywood in particular feel like very afraid of this, and that there's like an uproar and their jobs are at risk. And it's like, no, your job is at risk if you don't start being curious and embrace this technology and implement it into your archaic systems that are causing a lot of pain. So that's like, I think we should always add that into this conversation, is that way it's not that it's taking away, it's just creating something more fair. But let's be clear, everybody wins when we embrace this technology.
Totally, and I think that they try to scare us, and they're like, you know, when it comes to the data sharing, it's like, well, if we tell you who's watching and how many people are watching your hits, you're also going to know who's not watching the other projects. And it's like, we've all been there. Like we played shows nobody's come to, we've done plays where there hasn't been anybody in the audience, made projects nobody's seen. We can handle that, you know what I mean? Like, we've been there, we're artists, we know rejection, you know? Yeah. No, but it's just like, listen, you know, trust us with the knowledge and let us do with it what we can. Let us use it to make ourselves better. Let's use it to connect to a wider audience next time. You know what I mean? Like, we get back up. So, like, don't tell us we can't handle it.
Well, and you learn from that data too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I say trust is cool, but I'm about accountability.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in the worlds that I work in, of music, art, and fashion, there is a lot of issues internally and mechanically. TV, film, I will say that, like, I kind of got disenfranchised with years ago when I was doing case studies on IMDb and Vanity.com and websites like that, and I was an internet Viacom just trying to figure shit out, and a lot of it didn't make sense and it didn't add up. And I'm very much an analyst, data guy. I like to just crunch numbers and break shit down and then put it back together. So then I got into music, and that's a whole nother summit. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, the level of transparency that should and could be delivered with everything that we're touching and consuming and creating these days it should be second nature. It should be from Jump Street. And obviously, you know, keeping business as usual means that you keep having residual income from these revenue streams that have manipulated data and other types of things to generate specific results financially. And so you can't be a cog in the wheel or, you know, a stick in the spoke if you don't have a solution. And we have the solution. We have a lot of solutions. So I think just by the nature of the beast over time, it's either you're with us or you're against us in a sense. And they have to understand, without us as consumers, there is no them. And this is something that I've consulted and advised on with a bunch of marketplaces in the art world. I'm like, you know, if you don't refill the pot, if you don't reinvest in the artist, then you don't have any art to sell, and you just have a high overhead and no traffic, and you start cutting staff, and eventually you go under. And when you give money to artists or creators, typically they use that money to make more art or create more art or collect more art, whether that's TV, film, photos, whatever. And I think the same thing goes into, you know, people doing these trade for photo, projects, because it's transparent on that end, there's really not much conflict at the end of it, because you're not breaking bread, you're doing it by sharing talents. So that said, do you all feel that the pay discrepancies and the other issues that are going on currently and have been forever, do you think those are being resolved slowly because of these conversations being brought up frequently, or do you think they are being expedited because they see a fire that's threatening and it hurts all of us? You know, I mean, the area of the economy, especially like in Hollywood and bars, lounges, restaurants, nightclubs, hospitality groups that I work with, I can tell you how much of a fire it started when there were people spending money going out in those regions, in those areas. So those owner-operators are asking me to bring in promoted nights, bring in sponsors, get card swipes, and produce events. But when there was a resolution, respectively, to some extent, all those places were booming again with the traffic of the people, of the writers, directors, talent that would typically be going out and be a little less uptight with spending money. So, I mean, I guess, do you think we are expediting the loose threads and the cracks for solutions to be created by having these discourses and conversations, or do you think it's still slowly chugging along and there's no, I don't want to say end in sight, but do you think it's moving us closer to the mark of resolution and resolve by having these conversations, or do you feel that it's kind of noise and static and just kind of smoke and mirrors just to get it to disappear and be forgotten about? Because I think I hate to say it, but I think we probably have another 3 to 5 years until it's actually taken seriously.
I mean, yeah, I think both. I think that we're doing everything we can to accelerate the conversation in here, and I think that there's people in a room doing everything they can to decelerate that conversation. You know, and I think that I don't know. It's hard to really know how much progress is being made. I think we're at such a pivotal moment, and I think the thing that's very different about this than other negotiations at other times is that people on all sides are recognizing the issue. But there's a lot of people that are trying to move backwards to solve it rather than forwards. And I think that's what we're trying to do here, is how can we figure out getting the word out to as many people that there is already something that can really propel this thing forward and provide a level of sustainability that we haven't seen, you know? And I think that's what's exciting. I'm very curious to see where we'll be in 3 to 5 years. I don't know if I can exactly predict. I think we'll see what we're talking about the contraction that'll come from this year in the negotiations. We're talking about what the milestones that have been made in terms of Taylor Swift's deal, in terms of Barbie, in terms of all of these different things that have happened. And there's so much that's happening technologically and everything that you guys are doing that's just expanding the reach of what's possible. But we gotta throw kerosene on this. You know, we can't let the corporations slow this down. And so it's about how do we find the right partners, the right amplifiers, the right community engagement strategies, and just amplify this message. And again, what we've talked about since day one, we gotta prove this method, we gotta do it again, and we gotta make money on it, we gotta show them that we made money on it, we gotta make them money on it, and then we'll do the thing, you know?
Well, I think as a resident nerd on stage, I think, you know, I'm a huge proponent in, you know, this is at the core of what our company believes. I think, you know, the conversations that are being had, you know, around, I guess, you know, what we're talking about in terms of like strikes, labors, etc. I think that, you know, our point of view is that there are obviously important conversations and important topics to be resolved. There are a lot of things on the table that, you know, kind of need to be resolved. But I think that, you know, there's also very much that I think technology, a lot of the technology that we've discussed today, both Web3 and AI, these are the things that are going to accelerate everybody in this room forward. because I think what gets us excited is that, and the technology is going to enable, we're a 20-person studio that has the capabilities of being able to do 10x, 20x the size of the number of people in our company, and that's all driven by technology. So if you think about that, regardless of what's happening, in if you think about as a person who's making something, if I told you that by leveraging this technology you're going to be able to be 10, 20 times more efficient and produce as much, that's going to be the game changer. I think that there are, again, obviously important things that are being discussed, and there are a lot of things on the table, but I just think that the accessibility of the technology and the importance of these barriers to entry are just being really just crushed, and there's never been a better time to be able to reach your audience directly, create a direct-to-consumer business. And that's the stuff that I think is really going to make the difference in the 5 years from today.
Yeah, I think it's undeniable, and I like to say marketing's king, but distribution's King Kong. And direct to consumer is the future of things. It always has been, but now more than ever, what's spotlighted and highlighted is direct to consumer and ecosystem. And if you're the host and you can create a sustainable ecosystem that's poised for longevity because you're a good person doing good things for good people, or maybe you're a really good art and the output of that art is consistent and quality driven, you shouldn't have any issues scaling. And people are building castles on other people's sand. I think we're all kind of over social media only allowing us to hit 12 to 15%, fighting the algorithm. In-person conversations that aren't echo chambers, I think, are the valuable ones. And as you said, making the technology undeniable to put it in the face and be like, look, I just produced 1,000 songs last night in an hour. 1,000 songs in an hour. Granted, 98% were trash. But the ones that weren't gave me a brain line or a bottom line base and foundation with my structure and creative can become something better. And it's the same thing with TV and film right now, with people using Runway and ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion and more. And I think it's gonna hit a point where even the industry standards are a huge conversation that is regular, and that's changing before our eyes right now. Kids can actually tell if something is AI generated or not. Around the holidays, play that game. Show 3 photos, 3 animations that aren't and that are, and you'll see that the kids get it like that. So I think it is kind of just an over time thing that we're going to adopt all these new tools of the trade that we use to get paid anyways. And I don't know if you forgot your thought.
No, let's see. The question was about, we're in a bear market. So it is, I joined the company a year and a half ago, so I was in Web3 a year and a half ago, and my coworkers and I always joke that I've only known a bear market, so this is my normal. And I can't believe I'll say this, but I'm gonna quote Wedding Crashers, where it's I know it doesn't feel like it, but we're making progress. And some days, I say that because it can feel, with more money in the industry, or back in a time where FTX was sending checks all around, things were moving faster. But to Jordan's point earlier, the diamond hands stay, the people who are building stay. That's why I'm very grateful I'm at an infrastructure company. We're building schools. So we're able to do Meta Film 3 Fest. So the kind of sidecar to this festival of having a pop-up film festival, which is very near and dear to my heart. I worked at Vimeo during COVID. I saw a lot of these festivals go under because DRM, a solution is minimum $100,000. It's an annual contract. You need an engineer, very technical people, and that's ridiculous for one event, right, or a weekend event. So at Theta, it's really exciting for us that we can work with this amazing ecosystem of Film 3, show a use case that's very tangible during this bear market, and have a lot of passion behind it. And what's great is Stephen and I talk about this a lot, is studios love to be the first second, they don't like to be first. And none of those executives want to be a martyr. And so what's great is we're able to prove this together, go to them and show them, and them be willing to see it in action, see it be successful, and make it their own. But again, to let that guard down about Web3 and embrace this technology. And I think if anything in the world like helps you make more money or creates new revenue streams, it solves problems. And by the way, it will help you save money. I think it's in those orders that motivates a lot of this change. And so it's undeniable. It's like it's the Blockbuster when Netflix story. It's like Blockbuster decided, they had a moment early on, this is like a crazy story, but they had a moment early on to embrace like I think a DVD model like subscription like Netflix at first, or redo all of the carpets in their store. And I think we know which decision they chose. And so it's just interesting, like you could be in denial, but I think more when we're back in the uptick of the market, I think things are gonna be moving faster, but it's the people who are around during the bear market that are gonna be the leaders and having success.
Yeah, I don't even look at it as a bear market or bull market, because I feel like if your products or services are financially driven, then like if it's dependent and contingent on that, then what are you doing, right? And as you said, in terms of just the Blockbuster story, like years ago when I dropped out of high school at 16 thinking I knew everything because I was making more money than both of my parents combined through this small little company called PayPal, I was basically streaming and charging people $1 to come into my chat rooms and listen to me do prank calls and rap, right? Yeah, every day, couple, 300, 400 people. But then I turned it into a streaming platform when nobody knew what streaming was. And I was pulling and fishing from Yahoo chat rooms and AOL chat rooms and live events from age 16 to 20. Then I see Mark Cuban and Justin Kahn and Justin.tv, and I see streaming actually get heard of by more people. So I'm like, wait, I have an online open mic, it's a streaming platform, and people can rap in real time by joining as a rapper or a listener. This is huge. Oh shit, streaming. I need to talk to Universal, Sony, Warner, BMG, Interscope, Atlantic. But I'm 20 years old banging on these doors saying, look, you're basically getting rejected before I can even breathe because they don't understand it. And I'm like, I have the solution that's going to change everything for you guys. And then 5 years later, 6 years later, after I moved from New York to Austin, now Austin to LA, they're like, hey kid, are you still working on that? No, because you didn't support me. And yeah, it could have made you guys, yeah. So I think timing is everything, and when the timing's right, we'll know, but we don't want to be left behind. And if you took everybody in this room and you gave them all a wallet address, and then we put together a short film, and we pushed that out just to prove concept, like, it's that easy. It really is that easy. But obviously the decision makers at the top that do handle these huge wells of money and all of the investors and people behind that, that's the voices that you need making the decisions that, okay, this is the new, better, faster, stronger way for more efficiency and pipelines. So I guess that kind of segues me into asking, when we're looking at revenue streams and these different opportunities that exist with this technology, I'm a content creator. I hate UGC, but I do it by nature because I have to some extent. But I am seeing before our eyes all of, like, we're finally at that point where magazines and editorial and print is really kind of in struggle mode, right? But then because of ads, a lot of the YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Vimeo, etc., like, is also kind of struggling. So I'd be curious of what are some unique ways that you see the future of storytelling gaining a lot of traction?
I'm gonna tell Louisa to answer first because you guys have the best position on this, in my opinion.
So I think, I guess I'll answer it from first, just like the storytelling standpoint, right? So we really focus on community storytelling and community-driven storytelling. we believe that really the next generation of IPs are going to be a collaborative process. So, I guess, like to us, give you an example, we produced our first project in this space is called The Gimmicks, and we co-produced that with Mila Kunis. We have a project that's on Theta, it's Space Junk, and all of these projects have a component of being able to have the audience jump in and co-create. And it ranges from being able to vote on where the storyline goes, and it also has opportunities for audience members or community members to be able to create their own characters and really kind of support characters that they see being created in the community, vote, and get them on the leaderboard for opportunities to be able to make it as a cameo into the core canon. So actually we do believe in UGC, and we believe in UGC that is that has a bit of like a prompt crafted around it. I think white space is really difficult. Even as creators, we would say that there's nothing scarier and harder than staring at a blank piece of paper and being like, go, make the next great thing, right? So, but having prompts, having guardrails, having examples in front of you, that makes it so much easier. We've utilized different technologies and leverage things like AI to be really helpful. We have co-creation pilots. I think my co-founder John talked about it earlier today. We have an AI co-pilot, her name's Welbecca, that helps you create your own character, where you can input character phrases as well as help name it, or that particular creative co-pilot to give you the template and give you the kind of a blueprint of the character, and you can make edits and changes to that. So all of those are ways in which we believe those are the new ways to be able to kind of build bigger audiences in engagement. And then from a revenue standpoint, I think that yes, revenue is challenged across the board in media, advertisers, advertisers. I think revenue systems like being able to sell to traditional models, those are all challenged. But I think what people overlook is that there's never been more eyeballs, there's never been more time spent in media. I don't think that advertisers are not willing to spend their money. I think they're at a loss. They don't even know how anymore. They don't know where to spend. They think social media is such a hot steaming pile of trash. And so it's like, where do I put my money where I'm not going to get in trouble because somebody's platform's done something terrible, someone said something terrible. So I think it's really about building that engaged community. But we also do believe in a direct-to-consumer model where you think about that intersection between storytelling and gaming. Gaming is an interesting ecosystem. You think about it. Nobody thinks twice about the fact that you have to pay for a game. I don't hear anybody complaining about having to pay for a game. They're like, oh yeah, I get it. I have to pay for the game before I can play it. Or no one's saying, oh yeah, that in-game transaction stuff, that sucks. It's if you're playing the game and you're deeply engaged, no one kind of blinks about, pay $5 to get some extra bonus powers. I'll admit it, I play Pokemon Go, okay? Yes. I'm, hunting down some extra little critters right now here as we speak. And they're in-game transactions. So I challenge everyone in this space to really think about the shift of formats of storytelling. There's storytelling in gaming. It doesn't, just because it's gaming doesn't mean there's no story. And so that's games are such a great space to really think about how are they monetizing. And what's exciting too is look at what's happening in the gaming space. This year alone, look at all the properties that have come out of games. Five Nights at Freddy's, you guys looked at the box office and how it's tracking? I mean, I heard that it's not great, but it doesn't matter. It's gonna be great. Last of Us, right? I mean, that's, the big guy. There's just on and on down the list. So I think that what's exciting is that the revenue is actually there. Now, the revenue looks different because it's not just about ads.
it's not just about, hey, I gotta sell my show to Netflix or insert XY streamer. I think you just have to sort of like reframe and think about really like what is entertainment. It's really about like consumers spending time on X, Y, or Z, and there's a lot of consumer-driven revenue tactics that I think perhaps like traditional storytellers maybe haven't really considered, because it's, it does look very different and it does change the way that you want to think about storytelling. But I'm excited because I think that is actually the move forward.
Yeah, there's games, TV shows, and films that don't have integrated content. Like we're only used to seeing it as like a home shopping network style, or I'm selling protein powder to pay my rent, right? That's basically it. But there's a whole world of opportunity of integration from that user experience. At the end of the day, that's what it is. From the moment you come in, whether it's a photo booth or step and repeat that creates social content, doesn't really matter. But each individual person can have a unique experience, and does, so why not take advantage of that by giving them the absolute most that you possibly can? That's why we wait till after the credits sometimes for that bonus content, or listen to silence on a record and find out there's that little snippet that might have something special in it. So I agree, the storytelling is completely slept on in ways of integration of these new tools.
Oh yeah. So I think there's two big motivators in the industry as a whole, and obviously throughout the world. But there's fear and there's love. There's so much fear that motivates everything on the studio side, the financing side. There's so much fear about user-generated content and what you guys are working on, as if it's gonna like cannibalize the industry, and then it's like, well, now there's only gonna be AI-generated stuff where it's one person interacting and creating their whole experience. That would be an incredibly exciting experience, but it's not gonna take over the entire pie. There's so many different ways we want to engage with entertainment, and to have more alternative ways of doing that is exciting, and that also provides additional revenue streams, and you can branch a story out across all those things. You can use the love that you have to connect to the audience, to tell the story in all of these different ways. And I think there's so much anxiety about this change, but there's so much that's going to come from it. And again, the technology lowering the barrier to entry and just providing such a lower threshold of cost, because it is outrageously expensive to do anything in this industry. And yes, the revenue models are changing, and you're not able to make the same amount in the same way that you could before, but there's more ways you can create those revenue opportunities for yourself in the ad-supported promotion of teasers, trailers, behind-the-scenes